There's a reason why love feels so complicated when it involves someone who runs from closeness. You think it's because they don't care, but it's not that simple. What you're really dealing with is someone whose heart learned that love means losing freedom, that intimacy means danger. So they build walls, not because they want to shut you out, but because deep down they're terrified you might see the parts they've never accepted in themselves. The truth is, you'll never make an avoidant fall in love through force. You'll never win them through chasing, proving, or pleading. You make them fall in love when you become the embodiment of peace, when your energy whispers, "You're safe here." That's when their nervous system relaxes. That's when their heart begins to open, because love doesn't bloom in pressure, it blooms in presence. So the real work isn't about fixing them, it's about mastering you. Heal the part of you that feels unworthy when they pull away. Heal the story that tell. You love is something you have to earn. When you do, you stop reacting to their distance, and instead you become the calm they crave but don't know how to create. When they retreat, don't chase them. Let them. And while they're gone, build yourself. Grow, expand, rise. When they feel your absence, what will call them back isn't your words, it's your energy. It's the silent strength that says, "Hey, I don't need to hold you to love you." That kind of love is rare. It's powerful. It's unforgettable. See beyond their defenses. Speak to their soul, not their fear. When you love them at the level of truth, not behavior, they'll feel something they've never felt before. Acceptance without condition. That's when love becomes eternal, because it's no longer based on what they give you, it's based on who you are. And who you are is not someone chasing love, you are the source of it. You are the calm in their storm, the light that doesn't flicker when they pull away, the proven way to make an avoidant fall in love with you forever is not by trying to make them love you, it's by becoming love itself. When you embody that, they can't help but return, not because you demanded it, but because your energy reminds them of home. And once someone feels home in your presence, they never forget it. Love without attachment, influence without control. This is the highest form of love there is. Most people think love means holding on tight, staying close, and constantly proving how much you care. But real love doesn't thrive under pressure. It breathes through space, freedom, and respect. When you try to control an avoidant person, when you try to push for closeness they're not ready for, what happens? They pull away, not because they don't care, but because the energy of control feels like danger to them. Their system is wired to protect them from being consumed, from losing themselves in another person's emotions. The harder you hold on, the more they have to fight to get free. But when you release that need to control, when you give them the gift of freedom while still staying grounded in your own power, something profound happens. They start to move toward you on their own. See, there's a universal truth about human behavior. People move toward what makes them feel safe, and nothing feels safer to an avoidant than someone who isn't trying to change them. They crave autonomy, they crave space, but deep down they also crave love. They just don't know how to hold both at once. When you stop trying to convince them to stay, when you stop needing them to love you in a certain way, you become magnetic. You become the calm in the chaos of their inner conflict. They start to associate you with peace instead of pressure. And that's when connection begins to take root. Love without attachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you detach emotionally or act cold. It means you love from a place of fullness, not fear. You love because it's who you are, because you're afraid of losing them. You give affection without the hidden agenda of getting something back. That's the kind of love that pierces through the armor of an avoidant heart. Because most of their life, they've only experienced conditional love. Love that demanded something, love that suffocated. But when they meet someone who loves without demanding, who influences without controlling, it shocks their nervous system. It makes them curious. It makes them open. You influence them not by trying to control their behavior, but by embodying emotional mastery yourself. You model calm, confidence, and security. Instead of reacting to their withdrawal, you stay anchored in self-worth. Instead of asking, "Why are you pulling away?" you trust that love doesn't need to chase. It needs to flow, and that quiet confidence starts to rewire their entire experience of intimacy. You show them that closeness doesn't have to equal loss of freedom, and that vulnerability doesn't have to lead to pain. When you love without attachment, you also teach them, silently, that they can be themselves and still be loved. You give them space to come forward on their own terms, and they begin to test that safety. They start leaning in, slowly, tentatively, and if I let someone close, I'll lose myself. And here's the truth that most people overlook. Their wound often mirrors yours. You may not fear closeness the same way they do, but you may fear abandonment, rejection, or unworthiness just as deeply. So when you're drawn to an avoidant, it's not an accident. It's life bringing you a mirror, showing you where your own heart still needs healing. You're not just in a relationship with them. You're in a relationship with the parts of yourself that still seek validation, still crave reassurance, still equate love with effort. When you understand this, everything changes. Instead of trying to fix the avoidant, you start to see that your healing is the key to theirs. Because love is an energetic exchange, what you bring to the table emotionally becomes the vibration of the connection. If you bring anxiety, they'll bring distance. If you bring peace, they'll bring curiosity. So the work isn't to get them to open up, the work is to open up your own heart without fear, to meet your own inner child, the one that says, why do they always leave? And tell that part of you, see, nah, not leaving anymore. When you start doing that, you begin to radiate something different, wholeness. You stop making their behavior mean something about your worth. You stop reacting from the wound and start responding from wisdom. The avoidant can feel that shift even if you never say a word. Suddenly your energy doesn't demand, it invites. It doesn't chase, it allows. And this new energy gives them permission to feel safe, because you're no longer vibrating with the energy of fear. You're vibrating with love grounded in self-awareness. Healing the wound that mirrors theirs doesn't mean you become their therapist or their savior. It means you become your own. You do the inner work. You sit with your emotions instead of suppressing them. You learn to self-regulate when they pull away, and you build a life that's full even when they're not around. You begin to understand that love isn't about fixing another person's pain. It's about becoming a living example of what healed love looks like. And that's what begins to transform the dynamic. When you stand in that healed energy, you stop personalizing their fear. You no longer take their withdrawal as rejection. You see it for what it is, their defense mechanism, their survival strategy. And from that compassion, you stop reacting and start responding. Instead of trying to force them to connect, you offer consistency. Instead of matching their avoidance with anxiety, you meet it with stillness. And that stillness becomes the space where they start to feel safe enough to come forward. This is where divine timing enters the picture. Because love has its own rhythm. Healing takes time. The avoidant doesn't trust overnight. They learn to trust slowly through energy, not through words. When you heal your wound, you stop rushing the process. You realize that love isn't a transaction. It's a vibration. And when your vibration changes, their nervous system starts to feel something new, safety. They don't consciously know why, but they start to crave your presence. Not because you're giving more, but because you've become peace in human form. When two people mirror each other's pain, the relationship becomes a battlefield. But when one person heals, the energy shifts. The battlefield becomes a sanctuary. The avoidant begins to relax. They start to let you in, not because you forced them to, but because your healed energy gave their heart permission to rest. And that's the paradox of love. When you stop needing them to change, they start to. Healing your wound heals the relationship, because love, at its core, is energy. And energy always follows the vibration of truth. Avoidants don't fall in love with words. They fall in love with the energy behind those words. They are finely tuned to the emotional signals you send, not through what you say, but through what you. Language of the relationship. Every sigh, every pause, every moment of silence transmits something. When you're anxious, they feel pressure. When you're calm, they feel peace. When you're confident, they feel freedom. You don't need to chase, explain, or persuade. Your energy does the talking. And the moment your energy aligns with peace, the dynamic starts to shift in your favor. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or pretending to be unbothered. It means mastering them. It means learning how to stay in your heart even when fear arises. When an avoidant pulls away, your old programming may want to panic, to overanalyze, to reach out just to feel connected again. But that's where your power lies, in your ability to pause, to breathe, to remember that love is not lost, it's just reorganizing itself. When you can hold that stillness, your energy radiates strength, and that strength is what draws them back. Avoidants crave stability even if they don't know it. Their world is full. Emotional unpredictability. Their defenses are their way of trying to control that chaos. But when they meet someone whose energy is stable, they begin to feel something unfamiliar, safety. Not the safety of words or promises, but the safety of presence. You become the calm their nervous system has been seeking, and they start to trust you, not because you said the right things, but because your energy felt right. When you lead with energy, you shift the entire balance of power in the relationship. You stop reacting and start influencing. Instead of trying to force connection, you create it through emotional mastery. You become intentional with how you show up. You take care of your own energy first, through reflection, self-love, growth, because you understand that how you feel determines how they respond. When your energy says, "I'm complete with or without you," the avoidant senses that strength. It doesn't threaten them. It inspires them. Because deep down, that's what they want to feel too. Wholeness without fear. Energy leadership is silent influence. It's knowing that love isn't about convincing, it's about aligning. You don't need to prove your value when you embody it. You don't need to demand love when you already radiate it. When your energy says, "I'm safe, I'm grounded, I'm love itself," the avoidant begins to lean in. They start associating your presence with relief instead of pressure. And that's when emotional intimacy begins to grow, slowly, naturally, without resistance. In the end, energy is what makes love last. Words may fade, gestures may be forgotten, but the way your energy makes someone feel, that stays. You can't fake energy. You can't manipulate it. You can only cultivate it through self-awareness and healing. When your energy becomes your language, you don't need to chase connection anymore. You become connection. And that's when the avoidant, against all their instincts, begins to fall, not because of your words, but because why? Our energy feels like home. When someone with avoidant tendencies pulls away, the instinctive response is to chase, to close the gap, to reach for them before the silence swallows you whole. But that reaction is born from fear, fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of being forgotten. The paradox is that the more you chase an avoidant, the further they retreat. Their nervous system reads pursuit as danger. They equate closeness with the loss of autonomy. So, instead of trying to hold them tighter, the most powerful thing you can do is let go. Not in apathy, but in power. Give them space, but fill that space with your own value, your own growth, your own aliveness. When they step back and you remain grounded, you disrupt their pattern. They expect to feel pressure when they pull away, but instead they feel peace, and that peace becomes magnetic. When you let them have space, you're sending an unspoken message. Once you are free, and I trust the bond between us. That kind of energy is raw, and it commands respect. It shows emotional maturity, the kind that an avoidant, consciously or not, admires deeply. They've spent most of their lives defending their independence, so when you show that you honor it rather than threaten it, they begin to relax. They start to sense that this connection doesn't come with invisible strings. They begin to associate your love with freedom instead of fear, and that shift changes everything. But letting them have space doesn't mean you disappear. It means you fill that space with light, with your purpose, your growth, your self-care, your creativity, your joy. You turn the focus inward. You ask yourself, who am I when I'm not waiting for their validation? And you start building that person. You pour into yourself so fully that the silence between you begins to glow with your energy. When they sense that you're not shrinking in their absence, but expanding, it creates a powerful pull. They realize they're not being punished for needing space. They're being invited to witness your strength. Avoidants are drawn to stability even when they resist it. When you can remain calm in their absence, you become the grounding energy they subconsciously crave. Every time they retreat and find you still anchored in peace, still radiant, still living, they start to question their old pattern. Their fear-based mind expects chaos, emotional explosions, neediness, pressure. But instead, they feel consistency, they feel trust. And in that trust, their defenses start to loosen. The beauty of giving space filled with value is that it transforms the power dynamic. You stop reacting and start creating. Instead of obsessing over what they're thinking, you channel that energy into becoming the most fulfilled version of yourself. You read, you learn, you connect with your passion, you raise your vibration, and when they do return, because they will, they're met with a stronger, more radiant version of you. That experience resets their emotional memory. They begin to associate distance not with disconnection, but with the growth of attraction. The truth is, avoidants don't want to be chased. They want to feel safe enough to come back on their own. And they come back to strength, not to desperation. They return to someone who loves them without losing themselves. That's the kind of love that lasts. It's not loud. It's not needy. It's deeply secure. It says, "Son, I don't need to hold you to keep you close." And that level of security is rare. It's irresistible. So the next time they pull away, don't panic. Don't fill the silence with noise. Fill it with value. Fill it with presence. Let the distance become a mirror that reflects your growth. Because when you honor the rhythm of space, you allow love to breathe. And love that can breathe never dies. It deepens, it expands, it transforms both people. That's how space becomes not the end of connection, but the bridge that brings them home to you, again and again, every avoidant has two selves, the one they show the world and the one they hide even from themselves. The one they show is cool, composed, logical, self-sufficient. But underneath that calm exterior is a heart that's terrified of rejection, of disappointment, of being seen and then left. They learned long ago that the safest way to survive love was to stay behind armor. That armor isn't arrogance, it's protection. It's the only way they know how to feel safe in a world that once made them feel helpless. So when you try to connect with an avoidant, what you're often connecting with first is their defense mechanism, not their soul. And the mistake most people make is that they take the armor personally. They see withdrawal and think it means rejection. They see emotional distance and assume there's no love. But that's not the truth. Beneath the silence, there's often longing. Beneath the avoidance, there's fear. Your role is not to fight the armor, but to see past it, to recognize the human bay. In the defenses, when you start seeing beyond their walls, you shift the energy completely. Instead of reacting to their behavior, you begin to respond to their essence. You stop demanding vulnerability and start creating safety. You stop taking their fear as a reflection of your worth and start understanding it as a reflection of their pain. That's where compassion begins. Not the kind of compassion that excuses bad behavior, but the kind that understands hurt people protect themselves in the only ways they know how. When you love someone at the level of their soul, you no longer get caught in the drama of their defenses. You connect with the part of them that wants to be free from those defenses. Avoidants have been waiting their whole lives for someone who can love them without trying to dismantle them. Someone who can hold space for their silence without rushing to fill it. Someone who can look into their eyes and see more than avoidance. Someone who sees potential, depth, and vulnerability. When you show them that you're not afraid of their distance, that you won't chase or collapse, that you can stand in love with grounded strength, you become a mirror for their true self. You remind them that intimacy doesn't have to mean losing control. It can mean being seen safely. This doesn't mean tolerating coldness or neglect. It means you interact with their soul, not their symptoms. When they withdraw, instead of reacting with fear, you respond with calm presence. When they shut down, you give them silence without resentment. When they test your boundaries, you stay loving but firm. This kind of energy doesn't just change them. It elevates the dynamic. It makes them feel something rare, respect. They start to realize they can be themselves around you, even the messy parts, and you won't run or smother. That awareness begins to rewire their nervous system. Avoidants don't open up through pressure. They open up through patience. They don't respond to words that say, "I love you." They respond to energy that says, "But you're safe here." When you stop demanding that they meet you at your pace and instead meet them where they are without losing yourself, you teach them what real love feels like, and slowly their armor begins to soften, not because you tore it down, but because they finally feel safe enough to take it off themselves. The soul beneath the armor wants to love. It wants to connect. It just doesn't trust that love won't hurt. But when you stand in unwavering love, the kind that's patient, grounded, and free from control, you awaken something sacred in them. You show them a new experience of connection, one that doesn't demand or suffocate, but liberates. And once their soul feels that kind of love, it begins to remember what it was always searching for, not escape, but home. The moment you stop seeking love and start embodying it, everything about your energy changes. You stop moving from emptiness and begin radiating fullness. You stop looking for someone to complete you and start realizing that you already are complete. That shift is not just emotional, it's magnetic. People can feel when your energy comes from wholeness instead of need. They can sense when your love is a gift rather than a request. And to the avoidant, that kind of energy feels like freedom. It tells them, you don't have to carry my happiness. You don't have to fix me. I am already whole. That's the kind of love that draws them in because it feels safe. It doesn't demand, it doesn't cling, it doesn't judge, it simply is. When you become the source of love instead of the seeker of it, you stop chasing emotional crumbs. You stop measuring your worth by someone's availability. You stop waiting for love to fill your cup because your cup is already overflowing. This doesn't mean arrogance or detachment. It means alignment. It means your sense of peace, your joy, your power come from within. You start living from a place of self-ownership. You take responsibility for your emotions instead of outsourcing them to someone else's behavior. That's the moment your energy becomes magnetic to an avoidant. Because suddenly, you're no longer a threat to their independence. You're an invitation to partnership. Avoidants often run from relationships because they fear being consumed. But when they meet someone who doesn't need them to feel whole, they finally exhale. Your energy tells them you're free to be yourself here. And ironically, that's what makes them want to come closer, because love stops feeling like a cage and starts feeling like a choice. You can't force closeness with an avoidant, but you can inspire it through your energy. When your life is full of purpose, passion, and growth, they feel that. They see that your happiness isn't dependent on them, and that makes your love pure. It's love without pressure. Becoming the source also changes the way you handle distance. When they pull back, you don't collapse. You don't chase or spiral into panic. You breathe. You stay anchored in yourself. You continue nurturing your life, your dreams, your friendships, your calling. And that steady energy becomes irresistible. You're not reacting to their avoidance. You're radiating consistency. They start to associate you with strength instead of need, light instead of chaos. And that emotional stability slowly begins to melt their fear. When you embody love, you start to see relationships differently. You no longer see them as a place to get love, but as a place to share it. You start asking, what can I give? Instead of what can I get? That shift from seeking to serving changes everything. You become a vessel for something greater. Divine love, conscious love, the kind that heals. Your presence starts to elevate not just the avoidant, but everyone around you. Because love in its purest form isn't a transaction, it's transformation. This is what real power looks like. Not control, not persuasion, but embodiment. You become living proof that love is not something you find, it's something you become. And that embodiment makes you unforgettable. Because once an avoidant experiences someone who loves this way, who radiates peace, who holds space without fear, who remains whole no matter what, they can't unfeel it. They may wander, they may retreat, but the memory of that energy stays with them. Being the source means you stop waiting for permission to feel loved. You stop waiting for their response to determine your worth. You wake up each day already connected to the infinite source of love within you. And from that overflow you give, that's when love stops being effort and becomes nature. And that's when the avoidant who once ran from love begins to see it not as a risk, but as a refuge. Because when you become love itself, you don't have to make anyone fall for you. Your energy simply makes them remember what real love feels like. In the end, the proven way to make any avoidant fall in love with you forever is not through words, tactics, or effort. It's through transformation. It's about becoming the embodiment of the love you've been chasing, standing so deeply rooted in peace, wholeness, and purpose that your very presence becomes healing. When you release control, when you honor their need for space while nurturing your own growth, when you see past their armor and love from truth instead of fear, you awaken something eternal in them. You become the one who teaches their heart that love is not a trap, it's freedom. That connection isn't meant to consume, but to expand both souls. And when love flows from that place, it doesn't end, it evolves. So to everyone listening, remember this, the love you seek is already within you. Let it overflow, let it lead, let it transform. Thank you for sharing your time, your heart, and your energy. And may you always have the courage to love in a way that sets both hearts free.